Oh, see, this wasn't that hard. It worked out just fine.
No, it's actually, look at Instagram Go. I love it.
Instagram is it's on top of their game here.
I know. I'm very impressed. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing okay. A lot of online teaching. How are you doing?
Oh, yeah. But do you have a lot of group online teaching?
Mostly lessons, but we're doing like
Yeah.
I have one class that I teach, so that's a group thing, and then we do like our trombone studio class all together. So we did that. It was a fun adventure.
Yeah, I just did my first NYU class on Thursday, which
Hmm.
worked well, but
Did it go well?
was, yeah, it did. I was a little nervous that, like, you tell a joke and no one does anything. There's no sound.
True, but
But no,
the
it
jokes went
went,
over well.
apparently, I don't know. Doesn't matter.
True,
We did
true.
take a break in the middle for everyone to show their cats. So,
Oh,
yeah, that was
okay.
a nice little break in the middle of a 90-minute lecture on jazz
Oh, that's a
history.
long. That's long,
Yeah.
especially online. Online seems
Yeah.
to stretch time even further.
Yeah, it really does. Well, it's because it's just one person constantly talking versus a
Right,
classroom where you
a
can have a
class.
discussion or whatever.
That's so true. Well, I'm excited to have you on the stream today. I guess it's a combined stream. We had some questions that came in. So if you're
Excellent.
watching live, feel free to drop in a question, and we'll see it on the stream here. But we're going to talk all about Ryan Truesdell today. How great he is.
I hope that goes well.
So I think the place to start would be talking about the role of a producer in jazz, because a couple of questions that came in seemed to miss the mark completely, or have just no kind of awareness of kind of what the role of a producer, is. And you produced my couple of my records, but more importantly, people like Maria Schneider. And so, how do you tell someone what the role of a jazz producer is in 2020?
First of all, not more importantly, your records are equally as important as Maria Schneider's. Um, yeah, it's the role of a producer in jazz especially varies from kind of project to project, and you have to be able to think on your feet and be able to act depending on what the session needs. A large ensemble session obviously has more people and more things to keep track of than as this, the sessions that we did with you. Your sessions are pretty easy, or a lot easier for me, because you have a lot of it mapped out already. So there's not a lot of me having to plan like the schedule for the day and like this is what we do and all those kind of things. But a big role is just kind of the artist has to trust the producer's musical ears and opinions, and they have to have some sort of synergy. And so, you and I, when we did Cast of Characters and Here and Now, we had discussions about what you wanted. We looked at the music ahead of time. We talked about things going into it so that you and I were both on the same page. Because when you have, depending on how long you have for the sessions, a lot of times it's like 1 6 hour day that you have to come out with a record. Um, and so, yeah, it's a lot of just making sure that the takes that are done are good and are worthy of being released to the public. And I have to know you as a musician well enough to know that you will be happy with what I hear on tape,
But we'll never be happy. We'll never be happy.
well, you especially are never happy. You're difficult in that aspect. But no, it's hard because a lot of people are, and I mean, I've conducted when I did the Gil records, I had someone in the booth, Dave Ravello in the booth listening for me, because when you're in the room, it's just a different world than what's actually being put on tape. So but yeah, I mean, just to go down the list, like it is my job to make sure that everything is kept on track for the session, and I try to figure out, okay, we've got 11 tracks that we have to get done in maybe 2 days, and they're 8 hour days, and you kind of like, okay, let's do this. I listen with scores to make sure there's accuracy, and if I hear anything that's not in tune or not played correctly, that I make note of it. So if we decide to use that take, you can go and fix it. Um, another thing that I do, which maybe I always feel a little uncomfortable about, but I just can't help myself, is if I hear things compositionally or artistically that I feel would better, your video slipped, or switched.
Uh-oh, it's
I'm
switched
looking at,
around. A
yeah, your
lamp.
lamp, talking to a lamp. Um, but yeah, so I sometimes make compositional artistic suggestions. Like I hear the first take and I'm like, well, we've started every other take with a saxophone solo. We really should move that around, or maybe we started in a different way to make this, because I'm looking at not just the piece as an individual, but the record as a whole, and
Hmm.
what makes sense when you put a collection of things together. Um, and then a lot of psychological. I view my role as kind of a psychiatrist for a session. And so,
Hmm.
the musicians, maybe I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail on this, but like musicians all have various stages of, or heightened egos of various levels, and insecurities with their own playing. And I mean, this goes for composers too, and everybody. Like we all artists have these different levels of interact with all of those different people in order to
Uh-oh.
get what you want out of the session. So you know, like I know for you, you have a tendency to not be happy with anything. And so you just have to
Sure.
like convince you, like I have to convince you, like, no, you have to trust me. This is good. Let's move on. And then you still will come back and do it when I'm eating. You'll fix something when I don't know about it, but
Shh.
it's fine.
I've never fixed anything. I'm perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so that's a very long-winded response, but yeah, that's kind of what I view my role. I'm sure there's other things that I do, but yeah, that's making sure we keep moving, we keep on track, we get what we want, offering up suggestions to help people,
Yeah,
managing humans.
managing humans. I was gonna say, there's a lot of stuff that happens that you're doing. At least if I'm producing, I know it's like you're doing that's like has nothing to do with when the tape is rolling. You're just like, come on, get
Oh,
back in there. Come on. It's like
yeah,
herding cats sometimes.
it's herding cats. And a large ensemble is even worse because you just multiply that by 20.
And
Um,
every time you want to do a take, somebody has to go to the bathroom.
Yes, 100%. Or somebody's decided to take a snack break. I can't tell you how many musicians I found like just standing in a corner eating nuts, and you're like, weird. The
Hello.
20 people are waiting for you. Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's so funny.
Yeah.
But for me, like having a producer that you trust it makes me like actually like be more organized and also like be more thoughtful because I know I'm going to have somebody else's opinion be thrust upon this music. So it makes me want to like be better when it comes to it. I always think about like what would Ryan say about this?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So
you know,
I have a
yeah.
question for you along those same lines. Do you feel as a performer in the studio, but also as a leader of the group, do you feel like having a producer in the studio takes some of the weight off of you of
Uh,
doing multiple roles? Or
yeah, I mean, for at first it was hard for me to let it go, but then I was like, oh no, this is way better. It's way better to have someone just I trust this person. They're not going to let this suck, you know,
yeah.
or it's not going to suck any more than it's going to suck.
Oh
It's just
Jesus,
going
I knew you couldn't let that go. I
Oh,
knew it.
also, I see there's a message. Luke Stillwell says, "Hi, Ryan," with a little heart.
Oh, I can't. I'm learning how to do this now that we're. Hi, Luke.
Oh, oh, little hearts.
Oh, you did it
Nice.
so much faster. I've been trying to teach myself now that we're in a digital Zoom
There
world.
we go.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway,
But yeah, I think I don't want to go back to not having a producer. It just makes it everything go easier for me to know that somebody be like, yeah, you got it. Stop being such an idiot. Just go to the next song.
yeah, and it, depending on how you are, not you specifically, but you as the general,
Hmm.
are as a musician, people can get bogged down. You just keep playing a take and a take and a take and a take. And even if we haven't gotten a take, and I think I've even done this with you, I know I've done it with other people when producing, you do 3 takes of a tune and it may not be perfect, but you're like, we got to move on
Yeah.
for the morale of
Hmm.
everything. And then you can come back and do it later. But if you
Right.
don't have someone keeping you in check a little bit,
Hmm.
um, even the greatest musicians on the planet can get bogged down in the minutia of all this, and it can really ruin a whole session.
Right. Yeah. Especially if it's at the beginning and you get bogged down too quick. It's
Yeah.
just like,
And one of my, not to give my secrets away, but I will say, and you've experienced this, I always redo the first take or the first tune at the end of the entire session.
mm-hmm.
I always say, if we've got like 15 minutes left over, just do it again. We have it in the bag, and it kind of takes the loose, or it makes them a little looser.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend, sometimes it's not better, but if we, there's something about the first take, everyone's kind of getting used to the room and the situation and
The
everything.
headphones and everything.
Yeah, it's just, if you have a chance to redo that first track again, it just once, don't beat it to, don't beat a dead horse. But
So I know how I think about it, but how do you think about like selecting like the first song of the session?
oh, it's so hard. um I usually try to do, yeah, that's a very good question. You have to balance, just like you would, honestly, a performance. I mean, I kind of set it up as a gig, like I would do a set list. You want to do something that, you know, gets the band playing, but is relatively easy. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
do the easiest tune first. I reserve that one. But I do like kind of like a medium easy tune, one that doesn't have a lot of stops and starts if they have to be done in pieces, or a lot of like weird tempo changes, or something like, something that's just straight ahead, because like you said, everyone's getting used to headphone mixes and uh, all of those details and whatever. So I kind of do that, and then depending on how many tunes there are, and there's always one tune that is either brand new or really difficult, and the band has played it a bunch but somehow never works in the studio. There's always those
Right.
tunes that you have to allow a little extra time and give people a buffer. So
Yeah. So this kind of relates to one of the questions that you had that you sent from your followers. This is from Stephen Harvey, because he said, "What are some of the
great
challenges of
composer.
producing large ensemble recordings as opposed to small ensemble recordings?" We kind of touched on it a little
Yeah,
bit, but
yeah, we touched on it. It's just, there's more of them. And I feel like my role, I still am doing the same level of attention to detail and whatever. Obviously, there are more score lines in a large
mm-hmm.
ensemble thing, so there's more to listen to, more mistakes to listen for, those kind of things. But the biggest challenge of large ensemble producing, and this is why I personally believe, and I'm not just saying this as a producer myself, but I don't know how people do a large ensemble recording without a producer,
Right.
because there are so many cats to be herded, and to keep, and just emotions and personalities and everything to balance in all of this. You have to, there's no way, from all the people that might be watching this or whatever, that are leaders of large ensembles or conductors and composers, they all know that it's nearly impossible to do it without adding the stress of having a recording happening at the same time. And so to have someone else that can equally go out there and herd in a different direction, like two sheepdogs going like this, uh, I think is good. And it's just a lot to listen for. I've
Oh
actually
yeah.
noticed in a lot of recordings that are happening now that I see on the Instas, um, that people are having multiple people in the booth at one time. That then starts to make me a little panicked. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but it makes me a little panicked, because then it's like you have enough to deal with the cats in the room, and now you've got herding
Yeah.
cats in the booth, and it's a lot. But anyway, it is a lot of just information that you have to be in charge of, and
Right.
that's what I think makes a good producer, is someone that's able to navigate all of that.
Do you feel like there's a situation of too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And it's difficult too. And I struggle with this as a producer, and as a leader. I have so many personal feelings about what I want the artistic output to be of my own
Hmm.
projects. But then you've got some person that you, granted, like you said, you trust in the booth telling you things, and you're like,
Hmm.
but and then there's always a moment where the two are discussing that, and it's kind of like, do I trust, like, I feel very passionately like this should be this way, but the leader also is like, this is my music, this should be this way, and you're kind of like those fine lines of dealing with that. And there's one of those in every session, and you just deal with it. I don't know, did we do that? I'm sure we did it, but I think you were kind of like, I
Probably.
don't care, just do it.
Yeah, no, I've tried to learn to just trust that other people probably have better opinions than mine. Like in the moment, like I can't judge it very um,
See,
non-judgmentally.
that's my feeling with, not to make this all about producing, but like that's what's so great is I feel like I'm why not have someone like, not me specifically, but why not have a producer in your session? Because I have to believe, I mean, I don't do it, but playing trombone has got to be hard enough as it is, and to do it well and navigate reading all this complex music and balancing everything that you have going on around you, you just can't, it's impossible for you to remove yourself from that situation and observe the bigger picture. Like you
Yep.
have to be, I can't, I mean, I played saxophone for a long time, and I can't imagine being like, oh, buttons and doing all these things, and then having to be like, oh,
Right.
I have to know what 22 other people are doing at the same time.
Hmm.
So yeah, no, I think it's a really important thing that usually gets overlooked, but I think the better, I feel like you can tell if a project has a producer. There's some little, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a little more polished, maybe, or a little more. There's just I don't know,
Yeah, and
organized. I don't know.
I
Maybe
feel
these
like
are bad
it's,
words, but
well, no, I think it's, what I was thinking was confidence. Like I feel like you
mm,
can hear, and like a relaxed, there's like a relaxation in some cases, sometimes absolutely not. But like I just feel like there's a confidence. You've got two ears focusing on the same thing, and yet you are then relieved of having to focus on that. You
hmm.
can focus on playing, and you can play better by doing so. And I also think, and I'm going to use you as an example, even though you're not an example, but like sometimes musicians, and they write their own music and they solo on every tune, and it's just like, oh, trombone, 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 and it's kind of like, yeah, yes. And then you get a producer in there, and you're like, what if we didn't have trombone? And it's just, but then you look at like when you listen to a record, I mean, I have to believe people understand that, like
Mhm.
whether they acknowledge that or not, they have to be like, God, we're starting on a saxophone solo again. Like, oh God, the fifth track has, oh, let me guess what's going to happen. Oh, saxophone solo. So just being able to balance the overall big picture of everything, I think, is helpful.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So if you're watching live now, feel free. We're taking questions live as we talk here. So feel free to drop them into the comments, or we do have some questions that we prepared by asking ahead of time. But
I
so feel
should
free
say
to do that.
prepared. Nick has them prepared. I have no clue what
I
he's
have
going
no
to
clue.
ask me.
I'm going to ask you one of the other question that came in on your end, which
Oh,
was
then I know this
from
one.
Brian Kroc.
Hi,
Uh,
Brian. Here's your
Brian
question.
said Big Heart Machine is his handle, but he asks, so if you don't know, Ryan has a great ensemble called the Gil Evans Project. He's been doing for how many years have you been doing it now?
This will be our ninth, which is
Ninth year.
sadly probably not going to happen because of this, but Corona thing. But
Corona.
anyway,
But
we hope.
he asked
I
you,
shouldn't have
I know
said that
now,
out loud.
you're putting it out
I
into the
shouldn't have
world.
said that. It's going to happen. We're going to do it, and we're doing it at the Jazz. Can I plug my stuff?
Yeah, go plug away.
Okay, I'm going to plug this in putting this out into the world because it's going to happen, and somehow everyone's going to wear hazmat suits to the gig, and it's just going to work. But the last week of May, we are doing our ninth year at Jazz Standard, and this year in New York City. And this year we are doing Sketches of Spain, which has never been done in a tiny basement jazz club. but we're going all out, and it's going to be incredible if it happens. So keep your eyes out. At the moment, it's still happening. So anyway,
You need to
all
make
right.
sure you film the setup so we can see how you get all the timpani and harp up on the stage.
Oh, I should. Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, I'll film all the timpani being brought down the stairs, and
Right.
yeah, I don't know how we're going to do that.
I don't
Anyway,
know. Anyway, so the
uh,
question was,
yes.
the question was, does Ryan have a favorite Gil Evans arrangement? So do you have a favorite arrangement
Um,
or a couple favorite couple arrangements?
I uh, I was thinking about this when Brian sent it in. Um, if I had to pick one, if you made me pick one, I'd
Hmm.
probably say Gil's arrangement of Barbara Song, which is truly remarkable. Hands down, it was the thing that probably, it was the one arrangement that totally changed my views on Gil, like made me fall in love and was like, this is exactly what should be happening in composition and arranging. But I also know every other big band. Oh, Brian just joined.
Yeah.
I don't.
Hi,
We're
Brian.
answering your question, Brian. Um, so I just to recap because Brian just joined. I said Barbara song, but uh, the only I also think that is become kind of a bit of a cop out because every composer I know is always like Barbara song, Barbara song. I mean, Maria was the one that first played it for me when I took my lesson with her eons ago, and and when I first heard that, I ran down to Tower Records when it still existed, and I bought like every Gil Evans record after that. It was remarkable. Um, if I had to do some other ones that are truly incredible, his arrangement, they're all ballads, weirdly enough. Well, maybe not. They're not all ballads. But My Ship that he did on Miles Ahead is
Hmm.
pretty remarkable. There's an arrangement that he did for Astrid Gilberto called of I Will Wait for You. That's incredible. And I think part of the thing that's so magical about these is when you actually look at the harmonies and orchestrations of what he's doing, there's aspects of it that are like totally mind-blowing. You would never think of doing that, but then when you look in another way, you're like, well, that kind of totally makes sense, and it's super easy and very simple. Like the I Will Wait for You is mostly just triads, moving triads, and a lot of it is the triads with what's going on in the bass and the voice and what he's got set up rhythmically and all those other kind of different layers. But I Will Wait for You. Some of the Thornhill, I mean, you've played this. I should ask you the same question. Some of the Thornhill stuff is pretty amazing. How About You is the one that Gil got his Grammy for, is remarkable because there is, yes, I Will Wait for You. Yeah, Brian, totally. Uh, uh, but like, how about you? He has three piccolos in these really tight, high configurations over the harmony, and it's just like, who puts three piccolos on top of a big band? It's the stupidest thing ever, but it's incredible.
Yeah,
Well, I
I
mean,
was. That's what I was going to say. Was that one?
how about you?
Hmm.
What's so? I'm going to turn the tables. What's because you've played all of this stuff. You've played in the band
Probably
for
most of it.
yeah, you've played all of it. You've played for like 10 years with the band. You've played all of it. So what would be your one first favorite Gil arrangement that you
Oh,
enjoy, and then or composition, and then what is your favorite one to play?
well, I know that my least favorite one to play
Oh, that would have
is
been a
the
better question.
introduction to "Laughing at Life."
Oh yeah,
Is
that
that
one's
what it?
really brutal.
It's in E major, I think, and it's
Yep.
like it goes up to a high E, like in unison, the first two trombones, and I'm like,
Yep.
no, nope, that's just not
Yep.
gonna happen. It sounds terrible every time we do it,
And it's fast, right?
and it's fast, and you
Yeah.
always want to play it super fast.
I like it super fast. Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about those shout courses with the piccolo on "How About You" that
Yeah.
gets me every time, and the horns. But
Yeah.
one that I always come back to also is "Prayer" from
Oh, that's
Porgy and Bess,
incredible.
and it's like
So
almost nothing to it, but
there's almost he's literally one measure that he's just changed the orchestration. That's the only thing he's done, and it's just repeated. But I will say with prayer, there, um, is nothing like doing it live.
Mm.
Like I can't really listen to the record anymore after I've done it like standing in front of the band because it is so deep the way that it
Yeah.
builds and oh it's so incredible.
Yeah. There's something
That's a
about
good one.
that one. Yeah.
That's
I
a
don't
good
know
one.
what it is about it. It's not because it's not like, oh, he's playing every note or some complicated thing, but I don't know. Something about
No,
it
it
is just.
doesn't need it. And it's just kind of that like it gets you and this is what I love about Gil too is that he doesn't he doesn't give you more than you need. It's
Mm.
all very simple and it gets this he creates these atmospheres, these little worlds where the soloist or the musicians can kind of live and survive. And I feel like prayer is one of those like kind of just drones so much that you can just kind of really get into it. And I feel like every soloist that has done it with me has always really brought out the best in them somehow, and they've really gone to a different place than they usually do.
Yeah, because you can't let up for a second because the band is still there, like
Yeah.
pushing them, or at least that's how it feels. I don't know.
Oh, prayer's a good one. Yeah,
I
that's a good
also I
one.
like that Ballad of the Sad Young Man. That one's
That's another beautiful. Yeah, that's another favorite. There's a
that's a good
moment
one.
where the tuba comes up and the trombones and everything goes down. You know that like what is it? The second 8 bars, the last like 2 bars of it, the trombones have that thing by themselves, and the tuba
Oh
comes
yeah,
up and it ends up in that like A, I think it's A something or other major. Anyway, I can't remember the specifics, but yeah, ballad. And then what is it? The high point of the trombone, C or high D?
the D, yeah,
Do do. Yeah.
yeah. It's killing.
Somebody
Um,
just said some question. I can't read it.
oh, I can read it. It's from Luke. Luke says, "How have you guys been handling the quarantine as faculty and as artists? Any projects coming to life during this lockdown?"
Oh, do you want to go first, or do
How
you want me to
how
go?
am I handling it? That is one day at a time.
Yeah.
But for me, it's actually, I mean, I've always got a million lists of things to do, so I've actually been slowly catching up. So it's been pretty positive in that regard for me. But
Yeah, I think it's so the challenge that I've noticed, and I've obviously a lot of people are having these conversations about
mhm.
this because everyone's going through this at the same time. But um, for me, it does. I feel a little guilt because it's like, oh my gosh, I have all of this time to catch up on things
Right.
and to really focus on other things. But it's also a little difficult because a lot of my projects are involving more than 10 people and everyone's a little bit gun shy as to when we're going to get back fully to be able to do concerts and things like that again. So, and not in the financial situation of the country and the world
Hmm.
is a little hard to be like, hi, book a big band. You know?
It's super affordable.
It's super affordable. What you need anti-corona is a big band. So, yeah, so those, but it's you just have to remember, I keep telling myself if I need moments to sit on the couch and watch Netflix that I can't feel guilty about that.
Hmm.
And that this is the one moment in time of our lifetimes, hopefully the last, that the entire planet is going through the same thing at the same time. And
Right.
so to know that you're not alone in this and we're all doing what we can to keep by and
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
As much
yeah,
as
as
we can.
faculty, yeah, Zoom is like the greatest thing ever, best thing that's happened to schools.
Hmm.
Um, or at least when everyone lives in their apartments. uh, but
Yep.
yeah, Zoom classes and Zoom meetings and Zoom happy hours and dinners. I had dinner with someone the other day with them sitting at the other end of my table on the computer, and
Oh, that's
yeah.
nice.
So,
Luke says no Zoom rehearsals. Yeah, no, we canceled all of our rehearsals. No
oh, for
rehearsals.
faculty,
Yeah.
you're for UNT. I mean, you
Yeah,
guys,
for UNT, yeah, there's no more rehearsals. All those classes are
yeah. I mean,
done for.
I've actually been curious about that because I've seen a bunch of people do like recordings where everyone records their part at home,
Right.
but they all do
Right.
that separately, right? Is there a live
Separately.
rehearsal
Yeah.
thing?
I don't know. There's something called, I haven't checked it out, called Jam Kazam. I haven't checked it out, but some people have told me about it. But I don't think anyone has a fast enough internet connection to really do anything live. Even this
Yeah.
would be too slow, to actually play together.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want that anyway, so.
Andrew
So,
Gutauskas. Hi, Andy. Watching.
oh, hi,
He
Andy.
gave us
Yeah.
some hearts. I love
Oh,
hearts.
I'm
He's
sending
being
more
back.
hearts back. I'm not fast. Oh, yeah, that was right.
You're
Wait,
supposed to,
it
yeah.
takes me a minute to get it going. There.
That's amazing.
Um,
Yeah. So there was another question here that I was interested to get your feedback. Somebody texted it to me because they said it was too long of a question. Says, sorry, this question is too long. This guy's name is Drew B. Taylor. I don't know who it is. But
how did he text? Oh, like DM'd it or
yeah,
something.
he DM'd it to me. Says, how do the both of you go about instrumentation for creating textures and developments, read combinations, mutes, etc., and the difference in approach between the two groups? I guess he means large ensemble and small ensemble.
Wait, is that the end of it, or does it keep going?
That's the end of the question.
Read it again. I'm a little confused.
How do the both of you go about instrumentation for creating textures, meaning read combinations, mutes, etc., and the difference in approach between a large and small ensemble with reads and mutes and textures?
Is he talking about like orchestration, or is he talking about how we choose what instruments play on which chart?
I'm not sure that he knows that question has that part to it.
Okay.
Necessarily. So
when he said development, made me think he was thinking of orchestration.
Yeah, because he said developments. That's the word that he used.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, I suppose I should take the large ensemble one and you take the small ensemble one.
Yeah, for me, I've been just trying to, for the last, I guess since the first record that you produced for me I've been trying to at least do one or a couple of tracks that definitely have a different sound to give people like a break orally. And so I think about it from that experiential point, like hearing an open trombone again and again and again and again just gets to be a little bit boring after a while. So I've tried to include mutes and mute combinations, and I make Lucas Pino play bass clarinet, and then the guitar has a lot of different colors that can be applied to it. So try to kind of just switch those up. But lately, I guess I try to compose and orchestrate at the same time, meaning like thinking about the texture as I'm writing it, I guess, or as I'm thinking about what the mood of the piece might be, that texture is coming right from the beginning rather than like developing it later, which might be different for a large ensemble.
No, and I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot with your own writing and with my writing too, but the biggest thing that I notice, and I guess I'll just address small group stuff, because I feel like a lot of small groups are like, in order to change the instrumentation or the colors of what's happening, I have to add instruments. So it has to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But you can make, a piano and a bass duo, you can change the color of both of those instruments throughout a record. There is so much that each instrument can do in order to change the color. And yes, that's when I see a bunch of compositions or something for a record and I look at it and it's like they all are open horns and they all start the same way. They all basically have the same form, and who has the melody is usually the leader, so it's usually the same instrument. It's like those kind of things which you think about in the moment when you're writing. You're like, oh, this would be great for saxophone to play. And then you start writing, 3 weeks later, you write another tune. You're like, oh, this will be great for saxophone to play. And then you put them all together and you realize the saxophone's doing everything. For development, especially in terms of large ensemble, it's just more people that you're dealing with. And you have to realize that the colors of the instruments you have to be reserved with. So a good example that I always think of is like the piano. So, or any of the rhythm section for that matter. Tendencies with composers, large ensemble composers, are to concentrate when you're looking at a score to concentrate on the upper 2/3 of it, which is all the horns, because those are the ones that don't know what to do unless you tell them what to do, so that it sounds collective. But the rhythm section, everyone's like, oh, they'll just make it up, and they just give them like
Right.
the harmonic
Nothing.
things, and yeah, they give them nothing. And so what happens is piano players, or I mean, the bass player has to more or less walk unless they're instructed verbally otherwise. The drummer is going to play time. But the piano player and the guitar player usually are stuck in this kind of like, do we play? Do we not play? And I feel like the default answer is always we're going to play until they tell us not to. So what happens is you have, and I'm not picking on pianists, so I don't get hate mail on this, but like you have piano players playing and comping and comping and comping and comping and comping, and there's playing and playing, and then all of a sudden there's a piano solo, and it's like, oh, okay, the piano solo, whatever, blah, 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 and then there's comping and comping and comping. And it's not necessarily a color that you are aware of that's there, but unconsciously that sound is always there. But if you think about it, if you didn't have the piano player do anything on a tune until the solo happened, that would be a brand new color. We have not heard that in that piece and up until then. You know, look at, you know this with Bob's music. So like Brookmeyer's music, the way he used piano was genius because he used it just like another instrument. So he often would just have them laying out, and then he would hit some high note in a hole somewhere, you know, and it's just such a brilliant color, and it brings your ear to that moment. And it's just, and to think of orchestration in that way, that you're, you know, that you're bringing, I don't know what I'm trying to say, like you're bringing someone's ear, and you're literally pulling someone along on this thing. And so you have to not just care about chords and trumpets and doing this all the time, big stabs and whatever, but to really bring the listener along this path and making this constantly new. And I think that's really important in this day and age, which are, you know, we're limited about 60 seconds of actual, you know, focus on something, and then they and swipe and do whatever.
Yeah.
To have some little thing that changes. Again, going back to prayer, what you said before, that's the brilliance of prayer, is he has the same, literally the same 4 beats of music that he does for 7 minutes or whatever. But every 3 repetitions of that, the orchestration changes. And it's just slight shifts, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and builds to this big climactic thing. But he doesn't change the harmony. It's just stacking in different ways and having different instruments play different parts.
Right. Right. Yeah, I definitely stole that thing we were talking about with Bob. At least I can think of at least 3 or 4 examples in my own music.
The piano thing.
Yeah, the piano thing. Just leave it out. Just tell him to stroll for a while.
Yeah,
he comes in with something, and then it zips you right to it. Or like I'll have the piano player not play, and then he'll take the first solo or something.
Yes. And it makes, because it's just like a breath of fresh air. And you would never, for some reason, it took me a long time to realize that, you know, and like if you listen to a couple of Gil's recordings or something, because those are good examples of specifically of the piano, because Gil is conducting a lot of times, but he's also playing piano. And so you'll go like Barbara Song is really beautiful in that way, because he has a little bit of piano things here and there, but it's not overpowering the arrangement. You know, like look at his arrangement of Round Midnight. You know, he gives the piano the melody, and then a bunch of other stuff happens in the band, and other people pass the melody around, and he just lays out. He doesn't play until he's playing melodically, and so it makes that piano sound really refreshing. God, I'm going to get so much hate mail from pianists.
No, you're not. But I think about the same thing with like Duke Ellington would do the same, right?
Yep.
He would play, and then sometimes like, why is there no piano? It's like, oh, he was conducting because this is hard. There's like too much going on. He couldn't play anything. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So it's been happening for a history of jazz.
Yeah, it's true. And it's fun to listen. I mean, I do it because I'm a nerd, but I listen to recordings not necessarily of what's going on, but sometimes I just listen orchestrationally.
Hmm.
Like I'll just focus in on one instrument, like almost like I'm transcribing it. And I just kind of like, okay, what are they doing? Oh, interesting. Why did they stop playing? Did they mess up? No, the composer, did he do it on purpose? Did they like not
Right,
copy and paste something for them or whatever?
right,
But no,
right,
I think it's really fascinating because then when you start listening to that, you're aware of how that happens in other music that you're listening to.
right. Or like, like when I go back to listen to those Gil things now with more knowledge about what's in the part and hearing like, oh yeah, that is really hard. It's always been really
Yes,
hard.
yeah. But it's not just jazz either. I mean, like listen to pop music that way. You know, why does some pop music get like? Why do we like as snooty little jazz musicians hate some pop music? But if you
Hmm.
like sit down and listen to it, there are subtle things in there that are interesting. Like I watched. This is so embarrassing. Maybe we should cut this out. Yeah. Anyway, I'll
Too
say it
late
anyway.
now.
It doesn't matter. It's too late. But I was watching quarantine deep dives on YouTube or something,
Oh
and I
sure,
came
yeah.
across a video talking about how everybody hates "Single Ladies" of Beyonce, which I
Is
didn't
that
know that
true?
everyone did. I didn't know that was true, but
I feel
apparently
like
they
people
think
love
it's.
that song.
I know that's what I thought too, but apparently it's like maybe it's like the snooty artist musician kind of crowd. Anyway, so I went back and I listened to it. I was like, because I had the same reaction. I was like, really? People hate that? I thought I liked that. And the thing I never realized was there's no bass in it
Is that true? There's
until
just the bass drum.
no, it's all there's no bass function in the whole first part of it until it goes to that weird chromatic where it goes to like C natural in the
I
E.
don't know it that well.
Anyway, it's there's um and I'm not going to sing it because it'll be on the internet or whatever. But yeah, it's you go back and listen to Single Ladies because all of a sudden it was like, oh, I never realized that there was no like bass in there until the one moment when it comes in, and then that's like, oh shit, yeah.
Right, 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 right.
And of course, it's like this big funky note that they hit. But
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know everybody hated that song. I thought everybody loved that song.
see, that's what made me go through it because everyone's like, oh, I hate this song. I was like, really? When did that happen? I thought that was a
Yeah, when
pretty
did that happen?
dope song. But
I don't know. So, you
anyway,
guys, if you guys are watching live, we're happy to take a few more questions that way. I do have a couple more that we saved up. This is a good one, and I'm very interested in this question. This is also from Luke Stillwell. He says, "Tell more stories about Bob," but I'll tell my story about Bob just
do you see
because
Bob's here? That's
he is there. Here he
yeah,
is.
that's a picture of Bob.
Oh, back of his head.
No, that's the Barry player. Here, we'll go over and see Bob.
Oh yeah, take me over. Take
Yeah,
us over. Oh, there he is. Yeah, tell us.
yeah. That's sitting over my piano.
He's there to vibe you every day.
Yeah, it's true.
So you'll have a better story than me, so I'll do my story first because it's not as good. But the first time I met Bob was when he came to Eastman when I was a student there, and I just remember he was supposed to be doing the forum class, which is like all the students together, and so somebody asked like one question about music, and he started talking about music, but somehow it morphed from talking about, I don't know, Clark Terry to all of a sudden he was talking about 9/11 conspiracy theories, and then we never got away from it for the whole rest of the hour.
The conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
people, they were trying to redirect the conversation, and it was just like, I was like, wow, this guy's really really deep into this.
yeah.
And I just like, this is fast to me. It was like, wow, this is fascinating, because when I hear him play, like, from that period with like Clark Terry, so seems so happy and positive, and then the
Yeah.
stark contrast.
Well,
It's like, wow, this guy is fascinating.
I mean, I didn't know Bob when he was playing with Clark, but yeah, the conspiracy thing I think happened a little bit later. I
Mm-hmm.
think the first, mm, maybe it was the second Bush presidency, is what really set him off. And as
Sure,
much as I miss Bob, I don't know that he could have survived to the Trump era.
this is true.
I think that was. I think he left us at a probably a healthy time for him. Um, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell Bob's stories. There's so many of them. I
Hmm.
was very fortunate to spend a lot of time with Bob and his lovely wife Jan, and at their house. And I mean, I'm sure I'll think of something specific, but I mean, like some of my favorite moments with Bob was, and it was remarkable because I don't know anybody that does this in our
Hmm.
lives, our age or younger or older or anything. I would go up to his house for a weekend, and he had a studio, beautiful studio in the basement, and we would go in there and we would listen to music for 12 hours
Oh, wow.
nonstop, just like everything that you could imagine. We were listening to Marianne McCall, a singer with the Woody Herman Band back in the 40s. And then we'd listen to one track of that, and then we would listen to Louis Andriessen, and then we would go and listen to like Ligeti, and then he'd play some piece that he wrote in the 90s or the 80s or something that I had never heard of before, and he played this great thing with synthesizers, and then we'd go back and listen to, some early thing, and we did that nonstop, and he loved to do it, and we didn't do anything other than just talk about it, you know, talk about the music. What did we like? He would hit me to, and I was so, my ears were opened up to so much music by doing that,
Hmm.
because it's music that I would never have necessarily been encountered with in my just regular listening. Um, Bill, uh, I just thought Bill Finnegan, the Sauter Finnegan, Eddie Sauter and Bill Finnegan had a band together, and they did the Sauter Finnegan Orchestra. Do you know the Sauter Finnegan? You
No,
don't?
no.
Oh, you got to check it out. So Sauter Finnegan, for those of you that don't know, Sauter Finnegan was kind of a commercial-ish thing. Like they
Not
played
really.
kind of like commercial tunes and kind of cutesy little things. But both of those writers, Bill Finnegan and Eddie Sauter, which if you listen to their, like Eddie Sauter was the one that did Stan Getz's Focus. Everyone
Okay. Yeah,
probably
yeah,
knows
yeah.
that record. Bill Finnegan did a bunch of stuff as an arranger. He's incredible. Anyway, but they wrote these things, and it's kind of a glorified wind ensemble. There's a lot of double reeds, there's percussion and celeste and harp in some places and whatever. But orchestrationally and compositionally, they're so incredible and like nothing you've ever heard.
Hmm.
Like there's a really beautiful arrangement that they did of April in Paris, and just there's really gems in there, and I don't think a lot of people would know that. But he would play, there's a record called Out of the Blue that Carol Sloan did that he turned me on to, that Bill Finnegan did the writing on, and Clark's on it, and Bob's on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So those
Wow.
listening things were something that are really like really special memories for me with Bob. But I mean, there was great stuff. He was so funny. He was so funny. And as dark as he could get in moments with, especially the conspiracy thing and the government and all that kind of stuff, um, he was so loving and warm to people. Like
Hmm.
he would call me, and I know he did this with other students and other musicians. He would call people every day and or every other day or something, and he would just say, check in, make sure you're writing, make sure you're doing this, those kind of things. Um, he did that with Bill Finnegan when Bill Finnegan was, getting up there in life. He would call him every
Hmm.
day and just make sure that he was moving his pencil and doing those sort of things. So yeah, he was. I miss him a lot. There's a lot of things that I wish, my default would be to just call him and, but anyway, no, I mean, I'm trying to think of the other good stories. My audition with NEC was a little harrowing.
I
he
can only imagine.
I mean, yeah, I walked in there and I was going for composition, but I had to play too. They made you play, and
Oh.
so I got up there and I didn't realize something about me was like, I'm sure Bob's not going to be there. Like, why would Bob Brookmeyer go to my audition?
Hmm.
And no, he was sitting there, like arms crossed, right there, and he didn't say a word to me the entire time. I didn't,
Really?
not a peep. Um, and I had to play, I don't know, do you know that Jim Hall Brookmeyer recording that they did
Hmm.
together, the duo, and they
Yeah.
played Skating in Central Park?
Hmm.
So I played that tune, and it didn't dawn on me that I was playing that tune with Bob and that I had done a lot of stuff because I'd listened to it so much that a lot of what I was playing and improvising and the way that I phrased the melody was the way that Bob phrased the melody. And I was like, oh God, he's gonna know.
Yes, he's
um,
gonna know.
but then the next time I saw him was uh, before I found out if I got into school, but it was at Maria Schneider's Concert in the Garden recording.
Mm.
And he walked in and I was like, oh my God. And he sat down next to me and on this bench at Avatar in room A where we were. And he sat down and again, he didn't say anything at the audition. I didn't know he knew me from Adam. And he just, he leans over and he goes, well, I said, hi, Bob. And he goes, hi. And I said, yeah, I don't know, something I was mumbling. And then he goes, well, I hope you get in. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that even mean? And so then I was like, and immediately I was a little eager because I was like, Bob Brookmeyer's talking to me. So I just started yammering on to him. And this whole time I was supposed to be producing and helping Maria. And she's yelling at me from the booth and there's some problem and I have to fix it out. But I was just talking to Bob and he just looks at me and he goes, I think you're needed. And I was like, oh, okay. But anyway,
That's so funny.
he's a good guy. And if
Yeah.
anyone doesn't know Bob, I'm sure everyone knows because he's a trombonist and this is a trombone feed. But
Trombone
there's
feed.
there's a lot of really great Brookmeyer recordings as a trombonist. That's
Oh yeah.
actually how I came to know him. I didn't know him as a composer first. I knew him as a
Ah.
player. He was my favorite. He still is my favorite instrumentalist
Mm.
and soloist.
Gotcha. So this is a question. I think this is kind of a selfish question, I suppose. But
It's your
so
feed.
you
You're allowed to do
mentioned
whatever.
that. So that would have been 2002, 2003, the Maria's
Schneider's?
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
or before that,
2003.
2003, right?
Yeah.
So when did you start having that relationship with Maria, and how did that come about?
Ah,
Not
did
to
you do that
quote
on
a tune.
purpose
No, I
with the
realized what
tune?
I did after I said that.
um, so um, she's gonna hate me for this because now people are gonna think that this is the way you get in touch with her.
Oh, well, you don't have to tell them.
Well, no, it's fine because well, what I did when I was in undergrad in Minnesota, she was from Minnesota.
Right.
She went to the Twin Cities for her undergrad, and and that's where I was at the same time. And so anyway, I decided that I wanted to take a lesson, and she was coming with the band to perform at the university. And so I wrote to her manager at the time, which I didn't know at the time was Jim Hall's daughter. Um,
Whoa.
so yeah, so I wrote to Deborah and I just said, excuse me, I said, my name is Ryan and I like to write music and whatever. And I said, I'm sure she's really busy because I know she sees her family's here, but if she would have time while she's here to take a lesson, I would really like that. And at that time, which I didn't realize, she was more or less stopping her private teaching that she had been doing. It was not something that she wanted to do anymore because she just didn't have time for it.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow she told me, I asked her this and she told me years later, she goes, I don't know what it was, but there was something about the way that you worded your email and that you were from Wisconsin and Minnesota and something that I felt like I should do this lesson,
Mm-hmm.
but she obviously didn't do it in Minnesota. So she said, well, if you're ever in New York, look me up and I'll give you a lesson. And my brother was playing, my brother's a percussionist for those that don't know, and he was playing at Carnegie Hall that summer. And so the whole family went out, and that was one of my first like real trips. I'd gone like tourist stuff, but like went out there and family went out and did a tourist thing. And I sat in my hotel room and I was like, here we go. We're going over to Schneider's. And yeah, we had a lesson that was like 2 hours, and that's the only lesson that we had. We listened to some music. That's where she played Barbara Song for me for the first time. I went down and bought a bunch of Gil records, and one of the things I was just trying to think of how it continued past my lesson. So one of the things we talked about in my lesson, I had just started listening and discovering Thornhill music
Hmm.
and Gil's writing for that. And we were talking, and I just said out of the blue, I said, "Oh, Polka Dots and Moonbeams is one of my favorites that I'm listening to right now. It's really incredible." And she goes, "Oh, just a second," and she goes into her bedroom, into a filing cabinet, and pulls out photocopies of all the original parts to the
Oh,
Thornhill
wow.
arrange, like Thornhill version of Polka Dots and
Hmm.
Moonbeams. And she goes, "Oh, I have all the parts, but I don't have a score." And so she gave me those, and I took them home to Wisconsin, and I made a score out of them because I told her that I had done that as score study when I was a librarian at the University of Minnesota. And then I sent her the score to Polka Dots and Moonbeams, and then I didn't hear from her for a month or two. And then she asked me if I would copy Journey Home. She's like,
Oh,
"I need
wow.
to start selling these things on my website. Would you copy this?" So I think Journey Home is my first one. And then she did a project with Yvonne Lintz, the Danish radio big band, and Toots Thielemans. And I caught, and she had to do like 13 or 14 charts in a matter of a couple of months. And so we talked every day, multiple times a day, and I was copying from Wisconsin, and she was FedExing me stuff every day, and
Wow.
then it just spiraled from there.
Spiraled out of control.
Yeah, no, but it's been amazing, and there's, I mean, obviously, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to her and everything that I've learned from her over the years, and yeah, we ended up with a very special relationship. There's something cosmic in some both of our past lives that we were somehow connected, and
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, and then eventually that's how I met you too. So there's like a kind of
Yeah,
a thread there.
that's right. I always forget how we met,
Yeah,
but yeah,
selling
you
CDs.
selling CDs for Maria.
Yep.
And
And
if
you,
I didn't you show up in a suit?
this is what the story that you like to tell. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I'm pretty sure you showed up in a suit, and I just remember
Probably
like, yeah, to sell CDs, and I was just like, yeah, I like this guy.
takes himself way too seriously. He wore a
Yeah,
suit.
yeah.
What's
There you
wrong with
go.
this kid?
There you go. Tell the internet that if you want to make an impression, show up to
Yeah,
sell
show up in a
CDs in a
suit.
suit.
That's right. Change your life.
Yeah, but it is
Amazing.
true. Not to like harp on this,
Hmm.
make it more philosophical than you need to, but it's those weird one fluke moments that somehow like make an impression. Somehow I made an impression on Maria in that
Hmm.
one fluke email that I sent her, or one moment that we first met.
Hmm.
There's a reason that I remembered you from showing up to sell CDs, and now we've worked together for I don't even know how many times over like 12 or 15 years or something. Um, so yeah, it's something to really think about when you're going about your business and
Right.
meeting new people, and
It's a small industry that we have here.
it's a small industry, and you never know the people that you meet and encounter. You never know how that is going to affect your future.
Even a Midwestern Wisconsin boy can make
Yeah,
it big in the big city.
I don't know about that. But yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but is there anywhere where you can send people to like find out more about what you're up to and any other things you might want to plug?
Oh, yeah. Let's hope that the standard happens the last week of May in New York City. We're doing sketches. Um, you can.
Well, that ended prematurely. Ryan was just telling us about his website, www.ryantruesdell.com. You can see what everything he's up to. He also does a lot of work with Brookmeyer's estate, and he does some managing of some of the scores there and stuff. So if you were interested in more about Brookmeyer's music, you can head over there to Bob Brookmeyer's website. But if you're just joining now, you want to go to the story and check out the live stream that we just did. It just kind of cut us off all of a sudden. Ryan Truesdell and I, we did a bit of a chat there about a lot of things, life and music. So thanks for being here, and thanks to Ryan for being on the live stream. But sorry we got cut off.